The economic collapse of 2020 has undeniably widened the wealth gap. Now, our country is essentially divided between those who patiently wait for some food in Breadlines after losing their ability to provide for themselves and, oftentimes, the roof over their heads, and those who sit comfortably at their own homes waiting for the meltdown to be over while discovering the joy of baking bread. Breadlines versus bread makers. That's the ominous picture of an increasingly unequal America. That's what we're going to expose in today's video. So, welcome to today's Epic Economist video. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel to keep updated with future videos. Yesterday, Bloomberg released a piece on the faces of the collapse in the United States. The report describes that since the downturn started, millions of lives have been affected, but in extremely different ways. On one side, we have low-wage and middle-class workers that became reliant on food assistance programs and unemployment benefits to secure a minimum level of dignity for themselves. On the other side, we have a small, affluent mass who has been largely benefiting from rising home prices, new work-at-home arrangements, and the pleasures of baking bread at home. The article tells the stories behind the faces that emerged through the course of the year. One of such faces belongs to Donna Swangler, a 42-year-old independent contractor and mother of three. She lost her job, and now the only source of income for her household comes from her husband's home repair gig work. It all depends on what my husband brings in. If we can't make rent and food, we're going to start falling behind. I'm scared about what's going to happen. We have nowhere to go if we can't live here, she revealed. At the beginning of the year, Swangler thought she and her family would be able to gather up their savings and finally structure their lives into the American middle class. But today, there are no more savings left. Her family is ending the year in a rented home in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, while she waits to find out when her unemployment benefits will be deposited in her account again, and if her family was qualified to collect food stamps. Just as for millions of jobless Americans, her unemployment checks already hit the 39-week limit and expired. Despite a new stimulus package having passed last week, the new $900 billion plan is being held hostage as the president won't sign it, and politicians are having another impasse over their new demands before releasing the bill. Even after the president eventually signs it, the money will still be weeks away from people's reach, which means that just as Swangler, many will be left hanging for quite a while. And in the meantime, their food and housing situation will remain uncertain. Stories like hers reflect not only how an economic recovery became a distant mirage fading on the horizon, but also how Americans are on a path to become even more dependent on government rescue to survive. The big irony is that the government that enabled hundreds of thousands of businesses to go bankrupt due to recklessly enacted lockdown orders that caused mass unemployment is the same that fails to deliver the money that could help the people to stay afloat during the crisis that they created. The population and our economy are now experiencing a world of low expectations. Regardless of the rebound witnessed during the third quarter, our country's growth failed to make up for the ground lost to the economic collapse in 2020. The overall economy is leaving the year nearly 5% smaller than it would have been if the crisis hadn't happened. Only 57% of the population is still employed at this point, which is the lowest level since May 1983. If we don't count the worst months of this year. The biggest question hovering over the heads of millions who have been financially hurting is, when will it all end? How long will it take for us to get back to not only where we were before, but to a path of growth again? The truth is that the future is looking as gloomy as the present. On the flip side of the coin, financial markets have registered considerable gains in the aggregate net worth of wealthy Americans since migration patterns towards suburban areas have increased the value of their properties and made them even wealthier. Meanwhile, as the well-off set of the population has embraced new ways of working and their own household wealth has substantially grown, for millions, the worst is yet to come. In a few days, a patchwork of unemployment benefits, eviction moratoriums, rental assistance, and mortgage forbearance programs that assisted many to make ends meet is scheduled to lapse. Some of them are expected to be extended according to the release of the stimulus package, but as there are no guarantees of when this will happen, activists say it won't prevent the wave of evictions that is building. According to the latest projections, 10 million households are at risk of eviction. Denise Cole's family is amongst one of them. The report told that Cole and her family of 4 children with ages from 2 to 20 might be pushed out of their home early next year, as the landlord has already filed the eviction notice and has set a court hearing. Although she managed to pay over $7,000 in back rent this month with the help of several programs, her family is still on the brink of eviction. In March, Cole lost her job as a housekeeper at the Hyatt Place Hotel and started collecting unemployment checks that by now are gone, along with her ability to pay off her bills. According to the U.S. Census Bureau data, approximately 1 in 6 people are in the same situation and have fallen behind in rent payments. Over 4 million have revealed to believe they will be forced out of their homes over the next couple of months. A different survey from the U.S. Census has pointed out that even employed workers have been experiencing mounting financial troubles. The data shows that employment income has dropped this year for almost half of those living in households earning less than $100,000 a year. Compared to those who earn over $200,000 a year, the figure is less than 1/3. More concerningly, roughly 40% of those earning less than $50,000 a year have disclosed they expect their income to decline in the coming month. For Evercore ISI economist Ernie Tedeschi, that's a reflection of who has been actually carrying the burden of the crisis. In November, the group of low-wage workers was earning 17% less than it did a year ago. The main reasons? Lost jobs or reduced hours. The labor market has been battered by so many rounds of restrictions, and every month it passes, it regains fewer jobs than the month before. The November jobs report showed that only 245,000 jobs were added, a disappointing figure compared to the 432,000 jobs economists were expecting. The unemployment rate has fallen a mere 0.2%, sparking concerns amongst experts. Job growth has seriously slowed in November. At this pace of 245,000 a month would be 3.3 years until we got back all the jobs we lost. We are running the risk of backsliding, maintained Adam Ozimek, chief economist at Upwork. Likewise, Thomas Simons and Aneta Markovska, economists at Jefferies, have stated that it is a disappointing report. Several high-frequency data reports, both traditional and alternative real-time, indicated that the labor market recovery was slowing in November, and today's report confirms this notion. With cases surging again and policies being put in place to try and slow the spread, hiring has slowed down. Also, worker availability is a significant limiting factor as well, with many unable to go to work due to health concerns or family care obligations. Employment in the leisure and hospitality sector rose by just 31,000 last month, after increasing by close to 300,000 the previous month, pointed out Michael Pierce, U.S. senior economist at Capital Economics. As long as we keep failing to keep the health crisis under control and strict measures continue to be applied to business operations, there will be gradually less jobs to go around next year. That is to say, there isn't a change of perspective in sight for the millions still unemployed and dealing with food and housing insecurity. One of the toughest scenes repeated across the country during the current recession was the miles-long car lines in food bank distribution events. Despite all help available, at this stage of the crisis, 1 in 5 Americans living in households that have taken a hit to income reported to oftentimes not having enough to eat. Feeding America forecasts that up to 54 million could become food insecure and dependent on government and charity programs for a prolonged amount of time. Jamie Torres is just one of them. As Bloomberg reported, after her once thriving business of cosmetic services had collapsed, Torres had to readapt to a new reality of greater reliance on food pantry donations. She outlines the difficulties to learn all the complicated schedules and rules just to collect a box of food. She said, "It's all different. You can't go to the same place twice. You have to literally jump around and go to a different one every time." For Torres, 2020 has been the year of financial ruin. "The year my life was stolen from me," she asserted. For 55% of Americans, this year has been a financial disaster. All of these lives stand in contrast with the few that prospered during the collapse. This crisis has both made worse, but also just pulled the covers off the extraordinary inequity in our society and around the world, affirmed Rajiv Shah, president of the Rockefeller Foundation. We've seen wealthy families and communities do quite well through the digital acceleration and high asset values that low interest rates and loose monetary policy have enabled, and we've seen working families in America and around the world suffer dramatically, Shah added. The collapse has laid bare just how unequal our system is. As euphoria on Wall Street sends stock prices to astronomical heights, Main Street remains in crisis, with roughly 8 million Americans joining the ranks of the poor since June. And that's according to researchers from the University of Chicago and the University of Notre Dame. The numbers are even letting some billionaires get worried that the enormous inequality may lead to mass conflicts in months ahead. In an interview with CNN, Ray Dalio, the billionaire founder of the world's largest hedge fund, is said to be deeply worried about a divided and profoundly unequal America. He argues that leaders should urgently address the dangerous combination of worsening inequality, political polarization, and mounting debt. He says there will have to be a resolution of the system working for the majority of the people in which there's productivity, and that could be obtained either in a smart, bipartisan way, or it will come by greater conflict. That's a threatening situation. History has shown that to be the case, he stressed. This is the warning of one of the world's richest men. And when even the establishment is showing to be afraid that things could suddenly get out of hand, is because so much more turbulence is about to emerge.